Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Gentlemen, have you ever heard that you need to have the right pickup line, or in the moment with a woman and she gets mad at you, you'd better say the right thing or else the whole relationship is toast? And yet you're not really the wordsmith you'd like to be. You don't feel like you've kissed the Blarney Stone or anything. Well, have I got a guest for you? My guest today is named Rob Thomas, and he is the author of a book called Wordless Connection. And what you're going to have, well, what the veil that's going to be lifted for you today is all about is how to connect with women with something other than your words, which is going to be like a godsend to a lot of you guys. Right. Very important stuff, fun stuff. And I want you to stay tuned for this podcast because it just might change your life, which I know is so many words, but hopefully you connect wordlessly with what we have to say, and your life will be better for it. Before we dive right in, I want to remind you that the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And if you're not on the Mountaintop Summit just yet, gentlemen, we would love to have you join our crew of guys who are getting better with women and having a good time as we do it. I'm at Scott McKay just about everywhere online and social media, at SCOT. MCKAY, YouTube, X, all those places. The only place I'm really someone different, even though I'm still myself, obviously, because we preach a lot of authenticity around here, is on Instagram, where I'm at Real Scott McKay. So with all that taken care of, I'd like to welcome to you Rob Thomas, who comes to us from Phoenix, Arizona. And he is the author of a book with a terrific, easy to remember name, Wordless Connection. So on that note, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to introduce to you Rob. Rob, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you. I enjoyed your comment about the Real Scott McKay. I get a lot of people ask me if I'm a singer. And
yes.
I'm a little older than
20.
That's right. And so I say I am the Rob Thomas. So anyway, I relate to the real Scott McKay. So
yeah, I always preferred Hot Wheels and corgis to Matchboxes anyway when I was a kid.
I like that.
Yes, so I'm already a fan. There you go.
But you.
Yeah, I did indeed think of Rob Thomas, but that's not a very Googleable name, is it? I mean, if someone's trying to hunt you down and get dirt on you, they're probably a lot more likely to get dirt on someone else named Rob Thomas than you.
Yeah, actually, one of the things I found is that when I go to a gym or the dry cleaners or somewhere, they say there's lots of Rob Thomases, but in my daily life, I really don't run into any. So on the one hand, it seems a little unique, but there's lots of them out there. So,
and of course, anybody who's a Monty Python fan knows you're much better off being named Rob Thomas than John Thomas.
That is true.
Yeah, very good. All right, so talk to me about what inspired you to write a book called Wordless Connection, because your day job is a little different than like being a shrink or something like that, which is great. But obviously this is something that's top of mind for you. So tell me about how you arrived at this destination, Rob.
Well, I had been married for a long time, and anybody
that sounds past tense.
No, I'm still married. Still married.
Okay.
No, but I'm talking about when this moment arrived where this kind of concept came to me. I've been doing a lot of work. My wife and I had had some good things and maybe not so good things in our relationship. And I was finding that I wanted to enhance our relationship. And we'd been working on some things, read some books, we'd even gone to some counseling. And as we went through that, it was always targeted on saying the right thing. You had to listen, then you had to respond. And then I always found that I was trying to say the right word at the right moment. And this is something that I don't know if it's for all men, but I often think men, when they're particularly trying to talk to their partner, there is just maybe a gap of an understanding, at least it was for me. And so I found I wasn't saying the right thing. And I really was trying to find out what could I do differently? Because what we were doing wasn't working, and I wanted to draw closer to my wife. One of the things that I do in my work when I am working with a large organization is that I have a certain pattern that I work with large organizations on as we're engaging them on a particular activity. And as I'm going through that, there are times that as much as I'm using something that's very proven, has worked very well, there are times that it's not working and for different reasons. And I may not know exactly why. And so what I've done in my day job is that I look to change the conversation. And often there are times I'll just do the opposite of what I'm doing. So if I'm meeting with the team every single day, I will then make it more random, or I'll do something like that. So I started thinking about this with my wife, and I began thinking about this idea of, instead of trying to find the right words, which was not, uh, my, my perfect moment. I thought, what could I do that would be no words? And I started thinking more about that, and I started doing some research. I had come across some wordless activities early in my research and my career. And so I started working on some of those. And so it was really a kind of a decision point with my relationship, and wanting to try and something and do the opposite of what I'd been doing. So that's kind of how it originally started.
It's interesting. It seems like spousal communication can end up just being a big cloud of euphemisms. I'm walking on eggshells, making sure I say the right thing. I don't want to tell her she looks fat in those jeans, for example, or something like that. Or, honey, you look like you're 22 still, even though we just had our 50th anniversary. It's a race to the bottom in terms of not saying the wrong thing for a lot of men. And I think a lot of women go through their relationship trying not to piss off their husbands because he's
Right.
irritable or his T levels are low or something like that. And yet, I'm sure you've been on interviews before, had people talk to you casually about your book, and I'm almost sure that they completely misstate the title of your book as Wordless Communication, when that's not the name of the book, right? We think of communication as having to involve words. So that's
Right.
why we make that, we bridge that gap in our mind about what our book's about by assuming that you're talking about communication, but you're talking about creating a connection,
Right.
not just having a conversation without words. Am I right?
That's correct. And the focus as you get into the book starts kind of building on this idea that not only do we want to connect, but we have some natural things that are just part of each and every one of us that really makes that connection not only be able to happen spontaneously, but we all kind of walk into the situation being much more experts about it than we think. And some of the things that I talk about in the book, in fact, the book kind of talks about 5 experiments that people can kind of engage in and try on their own with their partner. But all of them deal with doing activities that they don't need to ask permission. They don't need to invite their partner to do anything. They just go ahead and do. And one of the things, for example, that I talk about in the book is something called a 5-second hug. And often when people are in long-term relationships, one of the things that I've noticed as I've talked to a lot of people is that they stop really doing a lot of romantic things or really engaging with their partner like they did when they first started dating. And so if they do hug, it's for 2 or 3 seconds, or it's a side hug, which also is not very connecting.
Yes.
And if a kiss is involved at that, it could be a half-second kiss or a peck or something like that. And
Or I'm off to work in the morning, kiss, kiss.
and they feel like they made an effort, their partner made an effort, but they didn't make a connection. So as they walk out the door, they may even be thinking they're going to work, but they also feel like I didn't connect with my partner. And so what the book talks about is ways that you can connect, again, really instantly with your partner by doing certain things. And again, hugging is one, and we invite people to, again, hug for 5 seconds. And anybody listening can just go ahead and try this with their partner. And there really is a difference between hugging for 3 seconds and hugging for 5 seconds. I've noticed that once you get to the 5-second mark, there just your body starts responding differently. And it's not sexually, it's really just all of a sudden your body is responding in a way that this is more serious. I am more intentional. I'm more aware of something. And uh, the book also kind of gets into some of the science. At that point, about 5 seconds in, and particularly as you go a little bit longer, but really 5 seconds in, you start getting the body starts making oxytocin, endorphins are stirred up a little bit, and not only within us, but within our partner. And so this is kind of the experience that we had when we were dating, when we were holding hands, or we hugged before we left. Part of that was that we got a lot of chemical reward from within ourselves. Well, because we get busy, we've got children, we both are going to work, or we've got other things going on. We're not taking that opportunity to engage ourselves, our physical self, into this moment, which really our bodies are ready to go. Our bodies are built to make that connection and want that connection, really almost as a point of personal survival. And so our bodies are ready to go. And we have this kind of pharmacology store ready in our brain that will kick in as we start doing these type of wordless connections with our partner.
You're talking about the science behind this. And what you're talking about makes perfect sense to me, and in fact is rather profound, because you can relate what you're talking about in terms of hugging to eye contact, can't you? We're talking about connection here. If I see someone at the grocery store, a woman, and I look at her and she smiles at me and I smile back, well, then, that was pretty normal. If we lock eyes for a minute or two, or a minute, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, aren't we? A mere second or two, it's noticeable, isn't it?
It
but
is.
If that eye contact becomes 5 seconds, we're having a moment there. There's intimacy in that 5-second moment. It's like if you lock eyes with someone and hold it, they say, colloquially, that you either want to fight them or fuck them, is what they say. Whoever it is. And that really just coincides very well with the fact that if I hug you, and it's kind of like one of those Robert Evans Hollywood producer, "Oh, I love you, babe," kind of hugs, and then you're off, the back pat that shows insecurity with the hug every time, by the way.
Right.
That's what that body language is. If you're being pat on the back while you're hugged, I feel uncomfortable with this and I want it over with.
Right.
Almost usually, unless there's someone who has a habit of that. But ultimately, the longer the hug, the more meaningful it is. And so if you get into this habit with your spouse of just having the passing kiss, we're off for work, I'll give me a quick hug, then it has become a formality. It's become just a habit. It's become something that we go through the motions with instead of something meaningful. But if you hold someone for those 5 seconds, then all of a sudden you're reminding each other of that connection. And it's more romantic, isn't it? I mean, this may sound a little dark, but people I care about, when I bid farewell to them, I treat it as what if I never see them again?
Oh,
what if there's a tragedy? And I know that sounds dark, but I don't want it to have been that casual ever. And it's kind of a wake-up call in your relationship, even with your wife, to say, hey, look, this person in my life matters. I'm going to treat every minute with them as if it matters. And when we had something that symbolizes intimacy, I don't want it just to be a symbol. I want it to have meaning. On the idea of being wordless, it's often been said that if you want to gauge the right thing to do in a relationship, or where you stand with a woman, even whether you've known her for 10 seconds or known her for about 5 seconds, right? Or you've known her for 10 years, watch how she acts, not listen to what she says. So in a way, the connection you're truly creating with her has more to do with the nonverbal than the verbal anyway. Would you agree with that?
I would. And although I don't really get into this in the book, but I've seen and read about, as you're talking to a woman, what they do with their hair, or how they touch their ear, or the different things they do with their hands, are all very, they're kind of tells, saying that they're interested. And so I think things like that are very valuable. And the thing that is interesting about wordless connection is not that it is not just something that you do and then you talk. The New York Times did some research that was very interesting, where they had 32 questions where you got to know somebody, and then at the end of the 32 questions, you then spent 4 minutes just staring into each other's eyes. And the thing that was
That's an eternity.
well, it was. And not only that, this was done, they did this with total strangers. And a good number of them wound up not only having a relationship after this 4 minutes, but they wound up getting married. There's a reference in the book about that. But it highlights that on its own, even without words, what we do physically, and again, I thought your comment about watching the woman and what she's doing can be very telling and very valuable. And they're being open, in some ways vulnerable at that moment, trying to engage with you as well. So I think that that's very helpful.
I think you can extend that out to their whole mindset too, in many ways. Like, who hasn't ever watched a movie where the couple is bickering and she goes, "I don't like you. You're an arrogant jerk," and blah, blah, blah. And then they look at each other and just start making out furiously.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, yeah, you were a lot of talk, and then look what the action is. Or, "I can't stand you and you're a real jerk," and blah, blah, blah. But then she just wants to be around all the time and she's not going anywhere and stuff like that. I mean, that's a very visceral, plain spoken example, but there are a lot of subtleties that can come with that. I can't tell you how many times I've ever been on a coaching call with a guy who's struggling through a relationship with a woman, and he's saying, "Yeah, but she told me this, and so it doesn't make sense." It's like, well, watch her actions. Not just in the moment, but watch the cumulative effect, the pattern
Right.
of her actions over time, and then you'll know where you really stand with her. In customer service, they often say if a customer's still complaining and mad at you, you haven't lost them yet. You have a chance to fix this. They're still buying your product, they're still loyal to your product as long as they're bitching and complaining. When they go away, they're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of the things that you're talking about are very valuable. And one thing that I do want to highlight that I think that people, when they first hear about this, wonder about, and they think, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this. I wonder how this can work." There were a couple of things that I discovered. In addition to my own experience, I did some national research, and we engaged people and asked them to do this in their own personal relationships, and then keep journals. And then they shared those journals with me, and I've got a lot of those comments and some of those findings in the book. One of the things that was interesting is that, first of all, they go in, and I told them, don't tell your partner you're doing anything. Just go ahead and try it. This way, there's no risk. Feel like it's not going well. Well, so what? You just can go on with your day. We live in kind of a world where people feel like they need permission before they do anything, particularly something, in their relationship. So
Well, hold on a second. That's important because there's this huge push towards enthusiastic consent. We have a guy who comes on this show, and he firmly believes you should say to a woman, "Is it okay that I kiss you? Can I kiss you?" When, that never happens in the movies. They just fall into passion. I don't know. I straddle the fence till I get splinters in my crotch, as I heard someone coin the other day about that one. But go ahead. I just wanted to acknowledge the gravitas of what you're saying there.
I think
Yeah.
that that's a good point. And a lot of what's in the book really is focusing on people who are in established relationships where they've lost the energy, or they've lost,
Yeah.
kind they maybe had earlier. I think that there can be value and a place for getting permission, but I think once you get permission, you can just build a relationship from there. One of the things the people who engaged in the beginning with the first thing that they did, I gave them the 5 experiments, and they chose which one they wanted, and again, a lot of them would choose hugging. They would go in and hug, and often their partner, once it got to 5 seconds, they recognized this was different. So they often wanted, some of them say, "What's up? What do you want?" They were trying to guess because this was out of the normal, and it got a response from their partner, and their partner is all of a sudden, antenna up, something's up, what's going on? And and in the experiment, I said, just tell them, look, I'm just trying something. I wanted to let you know that I care. And that's it. So no exposing this an experiment or anything. And sometimes it led into some humorous conversation. Some led into other things. Sometimes they just separated and went off to work. But one of the other things that came out that was so interesting is that after they were doing for a period of time over several days, trying different experiments, keeping journals. Anyway, one of the things that we got back from them a number of times is that they did this, and then maybe a day or two later, their partner began mirroring the experiment back without even knowing there was an experiment. So all of a sudden, say a wife hugged their husband, the husband later would then come back and give an extended hug, or vice versa. And so really, this is something that is a natural experience that we desire, that we want, we seek. This is part of the reason we want relationships, is to have that kind of connection. And so we don't need a lot of encouragement. We just feel like maybe, again, we feel like we're at a place where we're more at arm's length. And so this type of experience helps kind of get us reacquainted to perhaps where we were when we first started dating.
You know, if you stop doing what you've always done, it's a pattern interrupt. And if
Yes.
you're consistent with the new pattern, then it gets adopted. That's how habits are changed. So what you're talking about makes lots of sense. I remember one time I was speaking at a conference, and one of the women speaking I was sharing the stage with was a sex expert. And I believe I've talked about this on the show, but I didn't talk about it with you. But it struck me, you know, very, very much how powerful the exercise was. So much that I was a married man and I sort of got trapped into it. You know, she asked for people who were very confident in their sexuality to come to the front, and I dutifully obliged. Help a sister out here. You know, she's speaking to a crowd, and I want to be part of a good crowd, not a tough crowd.
Go team.
And she paired us off, male, female. And it was, you know, as heterocentrist as that sounds, it was a bunch of guys trying to get better with women, and there were relatively few women there. And kudos to the women who did show up, because it was kind of a sausage fest. And she paired us up with women, and she paired me up with a particularly cute one, one who's actually my type. And I said, "All right, now what?" And she goes, "You're gonna not say a word to each other. The rules are you can't say a word to each other. You're gonna look at each other in the eyes, and you're going to communicate with each other how much you want to have sex with each other just with your eyes."
Oh, wow. Great.
So this chick was teaching eye sex. Women were hyperventilating. Like they were like shaking their hands going, "Oh God." And they were going back like, you know, with the hands, like, "I can't even," or like, "This is a little too much." Or they would just start just laughing and giggles. And I mean, and, you know, people were just like whispering, "Oh my God, this is so hot," you know, and you weren't supposed to talk, but it became really heavy and powerful. And I mean, you know, to my own credit, I bowed out before this got to be something I would be sorry about. But this also happened in Scandinavia. So the next exercise was she brought a chick in front of all these guys and had her get naked in front of everybody. And we were supposed to be in touch with our feelings about having this girl get naked in front of us. I was like, well,
that's
about
fun.
that, this has got to be Scandinavia. But all of this is wordless, isn't it?
It
You
is.
know, and it's interesting, and I don't know how visceral you want to get here, but this is a show for guys who are better men getting better with women, and a big part of that experience is how you treat a woman in the bedroom and how you take care of her in the bedroom. A lot of guys, as soon as they get into the bedroom, they indeed shut up. They don't want her to talk. They don't want to whisper anything in her ear. They don't want to communicate. They just want to get down and dirty. How do you reconcile that? Because I'm sure you wouldn't advocate men shutting up and just turning this into a porn scene. But there are communications you can have with a woman that are not, you know, there's a gray area there, right? You know, you can communicate with a woman with your eyes, with your touch, with your breath. You know, the Hawaiians have that all figured out. They have a word for it. And yeah, you sound like you're ready to talk about it. So you know what I'm talking about. Get after it. Tell me what you think.
A couple of things first that I wanted to highlight. we come ready when we come into this life. We come with kind of a library of knowledge about communicating wordlessly. Everyone on the planet knows what a smile is. Everybody on the planet, regardless of their culture, how much money they have, they know what a hug means. And either with their partner or with their mother or whoever, we all have this common understanding, and we do not need that translated. And so there's lots of things about how we exist that really is ready to communicate. And it's actually the words that sometimes get in the way or are so distracting, we don't notice the messages that are really being said wordlessly. And so I wanted to just kind of establish that we've got a lot going for us, and we're already kind of in a way expert at this because we've had millennia of time to evolve this communication, this library of knowledge that we just can walk down the street and engage. So I think it's helpful to kind of keep that in mind with what I'm about to say. So I do think, believe me, I think talking is very valuable. It's ways that we say, you know, we celebrate things or say, I love you. All that is very important.
Well, this would be a terrible podcast otherwise.
It would be. And see, that's my point. And it can be fun. It's hard to tell a joke without, saying something. Anyway, but in this case, in one of the experiments, it does talk about a massage. Now, in this case, the massage is non-sexual, but again, the journals that I got, often the non-sexual turns into something more sexual as the people engage and connect. But one of the things that we talk about there is that there are some things in the book, and I advise people to get the book so you can kind of look at this, get better acquainted with it. But as you work to connect with your partner so that they're feeling that too, one thing that happens is that, and again, I kind of talked about my own experience in the book, is that one of the first experiments I tried with my wife was a massage, and I went in. She was already in bed, and I got into bed with her, and I had given her massages before that were non-sexual. But one of the things that I had found out is that as you begin to touch, and again, when I would give a massage, in this case, I would give where it's kind of a firm hand, and I would move slowly. And as you move slowly and begin to massage her back, in this case for me, one of the things, again, that our bodies are so amazing, our bodies, as soon as we touch anyone else, our cells open up and want to connect. And when we touch our partner, their cells turn on and they also want to connect. So their cells are wanting to join that moment. And so one of the things that I thought about, and again, trying to do the opposite of what I've been doing, I thought about how much I love my wife, or in this case, how much I wanted to love her. And as I was massaging her, I closed my eyes and I tried to think with my heart. And I tried to take that kind of that electricity that you feel as you're feeling positive feelings to someone and channel that into my hands. And so I was really trying to share that message as I move my hands and with my wife. And as I closed my eyes, a number of things happened. One, I became much more focused on what I was doing. I'd given massages to my wife before, and she told me it has to be non-sexual tonight. So I'm massaging her, and it was so at times I boring. I often would count to 300, because I'm just waiting for it to get over. But I found when I was doing this, closing my eyes and I was connecting and I had this message from my heart that I was trying to share through my fingertips, I became very involved. I became involved and in the massage. And then one of the things too that I've also found interesting is that I closed my eyes, and I found out later is that when you close your eyes and you're still awake, you kind of go into this momentary, it's not really a dream state, but
Kind of a trance.
It is a bit of a trance. And the thing that I found is that as I was doing it, and when I eventually opened my eyes, about 15 minutes had passed. Well, I could barely drag myself through 4 minutes when my eyes were open. And so I was really surprised at that. And then when I finished, my wife turned to me and she said, "That was probably one of the best back massages you've ever given me." And so I was encouraged. That was really my first event when I was trying to do this. And I kept doing this over time. And then I started looking at other wordless activities like hugging, kissing, and I can get into all more of that as we go along. But I do think that there is an opportunity for us to be aware that we are built to connect with our partner. Whoever we're with, we're built to connect. In fact, I was talking to a chiropractor and he said, I explained this to him, he said, our cells actually turn out, and we have certain cells on our skin that really turn out to try and sense when we're touching skin. We can even try this ourselves. If you run the back of your hand against the table, it feels a certain way. But if you rub the back of your hand against your own hand, we feel differently. And it's the same when we are touching another human. We feel differently. And it's because our body wants to connect. And again, in this meaningful love connection way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here for people to experiment and have their own journey, their own adventure, their own, I'd even call it fun, as they explore this with their partner who wants it too. They want to have this too. They just, you've become kind of estranged from this physical activity.
There's a lot of opportunity there for guys who just really are very focused on sexual intercourse and want to hit it and quit it. There's a lot of wonderful, very deeply satisfying, even sexually human experience there that we miss when we try to speed through everything.
Well, I would even say there's more opportunity if you do what I just talked about. There's more opportunity for sex later and longer and different, and you're going to have a much more engaged partner to try and do all the crazy stuff. I'm not talking about swinging from the chandelier every time, but
why not? Just don't break the chandelier. It was expensive.
Right. They are going to want to have more engagement. And I found that with my wife. As I did more of this, and again, we were connecting more. She did some things, both, just trying to connect with me that I found very surprising. I talk about those in the book. But also, she got more sexual, which I was really at a phase of my life where I didn't think that was possible. So
one of our team members here, Trace Loft, that is his whole gig. He is a massage therapist. And he teaches men therapeutic massage that creates this unexpectedly strong connection that opens up her oxytocin sensors and makes her more amenable to you in other sexual ways. And it isn't like, he told me when we were working on, how to tell guys about this. The two words that are not allowed on this webpage are happy ending, because that's pornographic. That's not what this is. And he was adamant about it. This isn't a means to an end. It's a connection mechanism that really is powerful. It works, and you better be careful with it. And it's one of the graphics that our artist did was him with, like you mentioned, the electricity with sparks coming out of his hands, like he was like a wizard. It's kind of cool.
This is for everyone. It's not like only I had this. No, you do. I mean, this is really, we originally started living in groups, and part of how we lived in groups is that we needed to be able to connect. And we lived in groups about 350,000 years ago, and we only started
10,000 years ago. We started talking.
That's right. And so, so we lived all this millennia where we needed to engage and have families and share feelings and so forth without words. And that is why all of this got so deep embedded within each of that we bring. We walk into every room with that ability. And I think it's really powerful.
I think it's really powerful too. I think it's wonderful. That electricity you talk about is real. There's something that's soul level. It's whatever your life energy is, not to get all woo-woo on people, but this is as practical as it gets. I mean, you can start surmising to yourself where it's coming from. But I mean, if you have a really powerful connection with a woman, especially sexually, it can be
Yes.
electrical. I've had 2 different female sex experts separately come on this show and talk about electrical current you feel during intercourse. And
Yes.
guys are like, "What?" But I mean, it's like, it's true. If you have this cataclysmic experience with someone you've connected with, it's more than just a cheap lay. It
I
matters. Yeah.
Right. This is not in the book, but I read recently where the difference between the amount of energy and I can't remember exactly how they measured it, but the number of units that you expended through self-pleasure versus actual sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse gave you like 3 or 4 times the number. And so
Wow.
about this connection, I mean, there is really something very powerful about it. Now, I do want to highlight one other thing that I think is also interesting. Again, part of the 5 experiments, and again, another reason to get the book, is that some of them are non-touching. Uh, I Some of the people chose some of the non-touching to start with, and there are some things about how you can engage with your partner that isn't a hug or a kiss or holding hands or looking in their eyes. So there are other things that kind of, again, you connect with in a relationship, someone that you're living with, that is a non touching experience that is, again, helps the people draw closer to each other in a major way and a very meaningful way.
Well, give
So,
us an example, man. Throw some candy at the parade before we close here.
so some of the stuff, one is uh, where you can leave a love note for someone, and you can
And
do
that's not
it.
words?
Oh, well, it's not spoken words. So, it's you're not speaking, you're just giving them something of yourself. And the thing that we found in the research that was really interesting is that it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. I mean, it's really almost like passing notes when you're in grade school, or what's on a candy heart, just saying "I love you" or "You're the love of my life." When I was preparing this, I had one of the editors who was going through it said, "Oh, this is so boring. Why don't you write something meaningful?" Well, I was taking the words from journals. I got this. This is what the humans who are trying to impress their partner wrote on a note. And I got some real fun ones. One guy put notes kind of all over the house, and his partner then found them, but then wound up leaving them so that they could be rediscovered. And I thought that was really charming. Um, Something else that I get into in the book is something that's called spontaneous act of care. Often, and men get themselves into so much trouble. At least this man has gotten himself into so much trouble, where you go and ask your partner, "Can I help you this way?" Well, they don't want to give you permission, and they don't want to. By you doing that, you then make them your manager, and they're already harried. They don't want another task, and what really matters is that you do something that you kind of just guess at, and you do it spontaneously without permission, and it can be so surprising. And it they say, "I didn't know you could do that."
You know, what's
I
interesting about that is our society, especially we as men, have been trained, conditioned to believe that we're bothering somebody by interfering at all in any way
Yes,
ever. To the point where if
yes,
someone's getting murdered on the subway, people are like, "Well, I don't want to get sued," or "This
right.
person probably is okay without my help. They'll just tell me to go away." Just today, my wife and I had to go run an errand, and 2 things happened rapid fire. We were waiting our turn, and they had 5 people and 4 seats, so we're playing musical chairs without the music, and a lady walked in while I had gone out and talked to one of these guys listening. You know, one of my customers called me with a coaching call, and part of my coaching plan is you can pick up the phone and call me when you have something tactical that comes up, and I took the call. When I came back, a lady walked in front of me, and I just casually walked off, and I waited for her to select whether she was gonna sit down or not, so I gave her the seat. And, I didn't tell her anything. I just did that. And about a minute or 2 later, um, a lady who must have been in her 90s, a dear, sweet old lady, the very stereotype of a little old lady comes in with a walker, And I just instinctively went over. She had someone helping her, and I opened the other door so she'd have a wider berth. And when she looked at me, I gave her a warm smile. She said, "Thank you." And I said, "Well, you're welcome." And she took her place sitting down. And it turned out other people had left. So I took my place next to my wife, and I'm seated between my wife and the first lady who had walked in. And she goes, "That was beautiful." And I just looked at her like, what in particular? Wordlessly. She goes, "You opened the door for that lady." I said, "Well, I think most guys would." And she goes, "No. Most people wouldn't have even noticed. But thank you for that. I think most men have lost that." And I said, "Well, hey." She goes, "It's a compliment." And that's when, the coach in me kicked in, and I just said, "Thank you." She goes, "Well, you're welcome." And then she waited about 10 seconds and she said, "And you did that for me too when I walked in. You let me choose to sit down instead of rushing to the seat first." I said, "I did." She goes, "I noticed that too. Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." And, we had a little conversation. And you know what? A lot of guys are like, "Well, you're a simp. You're kowtowing to women. You're being a jerk." You know what the difference is? You know what the difference is between being Mr. Nice Guy and getting women fawning over you like that after you do something like that? Is the authenticity of it. Are
Yes.
you doing it to get some? Are you doing it to try to get in? Or is it just something that you did because it's your own pleasure? And that's what I finally said to this lady. I said, "It's actually my pleasure to do that, but thank you." Anyway, but I live for moments like that. She goes, "I can tell."
Right. And the world would be a better place if we did small acts of kindness to strangers and to people we barely know.
We're running out of time, but I want to drop this bomb. And I know it's probably unfair to you because you're probably going to want to comment on it. But I think the more we talk when we should be acting, the more full of it we are. I think the
Yeah.
authenticity is more often wordless than a bunch of talk, as they would say in New Jersey. I'll give you the last word.
All right. The thing that I want to leave you with, and maybe the group with, is to be intentional. There's a difference between agenda and being intentional. And being intentional doesn't mean you're going to do it right all the time or know what's up, but you can be intentional. And I think you with those women, and it can be with your partner, how you get up in the morning. I'm intentional about how I want to address this day. And as you do that with these experiments in the book, I think you ought to get the book and try them out. Do them intentionally. And I think not only will that enhance your relationship, I think it's going to change your life.
I agree. I hope you'll send me a copy of the book. I'd love to read it myself. And for the guys who are listening, go to mountaintoppodcast.com /, Amazon. And right at the top of the Amazon influencer queue, which is my dedicated storefront on Amazon, you're going to find Rob's book, Wordless Connection, right there, right at the top, especially if you're listening to this show within the first few days of its release. Also, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com /Rob Thomas, ROBTHOMAS, you'll be magically teleported, as I always say, to his website where you can grab his book also. What else will they find at the website?
Actually, we've got you're going to be able to see some journal entries from people. People have been leaving journal entries about their experiences and about the experiments. Also, we've got some other material that you can do some self-study, and so it can help you on your journey.
Fantastic. His name is Rob Thomas. He is from Phoenix, Arizona, and he is the author of Wordless Connection. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. When you write your next big magnum opus, please come back and we'll talk about that too, man.
Thank you. And I hope it's not that long. Scott, I enjoyed meeting with you, and good luck.
Likewise. Gentlemen, you'll enjoy meeting up with our three longtime sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, the Keyport, and also the guys at Hero Soap. If you partake of anything from any of those three sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10. And also, guys, some of you have tried Vominos out, some of you have not. It is the AI app that only uses X and Y communications content. So, no weird subreddits or Cosmo magazine weirdness in there at all. You can talk to the app. You can talk to Vomnos just the way you would talk to me, and I'll answer in my own words from the app. People are pretty amazed by it. It won't break the bank. In fact, I'll let you try it for 7 days free and see what you think. So, you decide before you buy. You can get your hands, I guess, figuratively and wordlessly, you can get your hands on Vominos at mountaintoppodcast.com as well. And if you haven't talked to me on the phone or Zoom for 25 or 30 minutes yet, I want to hear from you as well. Sign up there. All of that is there for you and more at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.